What happened to her was monstrous. It remains monstrous. And somehow there are still people willing to make excuses for the people responsible. She did nothing but accept an invitation to a party. That's the entirety of her offense. The charges against him were quietly reduced, and he walked away with a 12-year sentence. The man responsible for orchestrating Maya Fuller's death will be free before his 25th birthday. He located her through social media, a total stranger, someone he had never crossed paths with and who had never wronged him in any way. He fabricated a party that never existed and sent her the invitation. She showed up. She never made it back home. Every single thing that unfolded that night traces back to that one message he sent. 12 years. 30% of that sentence actually served, which works out to 3 years and 7 months. And he'd already spent more than 2 years behind bars before that plea deal was ever finalized. Run the numbers forward, and this man could be walking free before most of his peers finished their college degrees. The state of Tennessee never contested a single detail of what he did. He confessed to everything. He entered a guilty plea. And he's still going home eventually. He's not alone in that outcome either. Of the 3 individuals responsible for ending Maya Fuller's life, 2 of them will eventually leave prison. 1 will not. Same night, same parking lot, same isolated field out in Wilson County. 3 drastically different endings. That disparity wasn't random, and it certainly wasn't an error. There's a specific provision buried in Tennessee statute that made this outcome inevitable, and once that provision gets explained, it becomes clear why not a single person in that courtroom, not the prosecutor, not the judge, had any power to prevent it. But here's the detail that lingers longest. 3 separate guilty pleas, 3 separate sentences, a case that closed its books across 3 different counties. And to this day, not the sheriff's department, not the district attorney's office, not one of the 3 individuals who admitted their involvement has ever revealed what actually sparked this entire chain of events. Buried at the foundation of this story is a dispute that stripped 22 years off a young woman's life, and it has never once been explained on any record accessible to the public. Murfreesboro, Tennessee sits roughly 30 minutes southeast of Nashville, a college town where community bonds run deep enough that neighbors know each other's parents. Maya Christine Fuller was 22 years old. She graduated high school with academic distinction, competed on the basketball court, and collected both athletic and scholastic honors throughout her education. She held down a job. She called her family religiously. Investigators would later learn from her relatives that she checked in with them without fail every single day of her life. That singular detail carries more weight than anything else in the earlier portion of this story. On Friday, the 29th of July, 2022, her family saw her at home in Murfreesboro. That would turn out to be the final time. At some point that Friday evening, Maya's path crossed with a woman named Tiana Tipton, 21 years old and based in Nashville. The 2 exchanged heated words in what prosecutors would later characterize as a minor confrontation. Nothing physical, no weapons drawn, no injuries sustained. Just 2 young women arguing before going their separate ways. That's the complete extent of what's publicly documented about that dispute. Maya returned home afterward. The following morning, she got up and reported to work as usual. Nothing about her Saturday suggests that argument occupied any further space in her thoughts. Tiana Tipton also went home that night, but unlike Maya, she carried the anger with her. Saturday, July 30th, Maya worked an event at Geodis Park, the soccer stadium located in Nashville. She clocked in, completed her assigned shift, and clocked back out, an entirely unremarkable Saturday that would have otherwise vanished from memory. Tipton, meanwhile, faced a logistical obstacle. She couldn't approach Maya directly again. They'd already confronted each other face-to-face the previous night, meaning any message or attempted contact originating from her would be immediately recognized for exactly what it was. She required someone whose face Maya wouldn't recognize. Her younger brother, 20 years old at the time, fit that need perfectly. His name was Tyreshawn Bowles. Prosecutors would later state without ambiguity that he was fully aware of the previous night's altercation, understood his sister's anger, and knew she intended to confront this woman again. Armed with that knowledge, he picked up his phone. Prosecutors allege that Bowles reached out to Maya Fuller after learning about the confrontation between her and his sister, fully aware that his sister planned to physically assault Fuller that same night. He would later deny any knowledge that the plan extended to kidnapping and killing her. It's worth pausing on exactly how that search unfolded, because this is where the narrative starts to feel deeply unsettling for anyone paying close attention. Bowles wasn't present during the original argument. That much has never been disputed. Everything attributed to him publicly begins with him receiving secondhand information from his sister sometime Saturday. From that limited information, he managed to track down a specific young woman from an entirely different county through social media. He located her profile, read through enough of it to craft a message that would sound convincingly casual coming from a total stranger. Investigators have never clarified the mechanics behind that search. They've never disclosed whether he already possessed her name beforehand, whether Tipton supplied it, whether some third party provided the information, or whether some undisclosed connection existed between these two social circles that never made it into any official record. According to law enforcement, there was no ongoing relationship between these parties. These individuals were complete strangers to one another, with no history whatsoever. Their entire acquaintance had formed within roughly 24 hours. That statement carries an enormous burden of explanation. It's law enforcement essentially declaring there's no backstory here, no prior connection linking these names together before that Friday night. There's no reason to doubt the sincerity of that statement. But place two facts side by side: absolutely zero prior relationship of any kind, and a 20-year-old man successfully locating a stranger's profile from another county on a Saturday afternoon, based entirely on a fight he didn't even witness, moving quickly enough to have her standing in a parking lot by 11 o'clock that same night. Something doesn't add up in that sequence. It's unclear exactly what's missing, and nobody outside that immediate family circle knows either, because everyone capable of providing that answer accepted plea deals instead. A plea agreement doesn't obligate anyone to explain themselves publicly. What he ultimately sent her was an invitation to a party at Island Vibes nightclub, located on Antioch Pike in South Nashville near Harding Place, scheduled for that very night. Some viewers might already be forming judgments about her decision to attend. So consider exactly what that invitation actually promised her. A nightclub, a public establishment complete with doors, staff, security personnel, a parking lot filled with other people's vehicles, essentially the most visible and populated location in that entire neighborhood. If someone deliberately engineered a setting designed to feel completely safe to a 22-year-old woman, this is precisely what they'd construct. And the individual sending that invitation had no visible connection whatsoever to Friday night's confrontation as far as Maya could tell. He hadn't been present for the argument. His name carried no significance to her because there was nothing attached to it that should have raised concern. She was 22 years old in 2022. Invitations of that nature arrive constantly. Promoters advertising events, mutual acquaintances forwarding names, someone's cousin extending a casual invite. Accepting one doesn't represent poor judgment. It's simply an ordinary Saturday night decision. That's precisely what makes this entire case so deeply disturbing. The plan never required Maya Fuller to make any kind of mistake whatsoever. It only required her to finish her shift, return home, get dressed, and do the single most unremarkable thing imaginable with a free evening. She said yes. She climbed into her own vehicle, a dark gray 2020 Toyota Camry, and drove herself to the venue. Here's something the defense in this case never had to argue before a jury, because no jury was ever assembled to hear it. 26 hours. That's the exact interval separating two women arguing in a parking lot Friday night from Maya Fuller walking directly into a coordinated trap Saturday night. A full night's sleep, an entire workday, a complete stretch of ordinary life occupying that gap. What fills that space isn't one impulsive action. It's an entire chain of deliberate decisions, and that chain contains multiple points where it could have broken. Tipton had to remain angry even after sleeping on it overnight. That's the first gap. She then had to actually tell her brother, not simply mention it in passing, but communicate it thoroughly enough that a man who wasn't even present would go searching for a woman he'd never laid eyes on. That requires an actual conversation, which demands both time and deliberate intent. That's the second gap. He then had to sit down and actively search for her, an action requiring conscious effort rather than any kind of automatic reflex. He then had to determine exactly what message to send to someone he knew absolutely nothing about, and then actually transmit it. That's the third gap. Following that, he had to wait, and this is the piece that consistently gets overlooked. She had to respond to him. He had to reply back. He had to sustain that entire exchange convincingly as a friendly stranger extending a party invitation for however long it took her to make her decision. That's the fourth gap. And there was a third participant involved in all of this. Lamia Pipkins, also 20 years old, closely connected to both siblings. At some point during that Saturday, she learned exactly what was being planned, and she made her own independent choice to be present in that parking lot when Maya arrived. That's the fifth gap. This wasn't one impulsive, hot-headed moment. This represents an entire day's worth of separate, deliberate choices made by three distinct individuals, each with an opportunity to abandon the plan at multiple points along the way. Not one of them took that opportunity. Maya arrived shortly after 11 o'clock. Vehicles packed the lot, music pulsed through the walls, people moved steadily in and out of the entrance. She parked her car, stepped out, and began searching for whoever had extended the invitation. What she encountered instead was a face she immediately recognized from the previous night's confrontation. She had never actually been invited to Island Vibes. She had been deliberately lured there. Tipton and Pipkins approached her together, two attackers targeting a single victim, a plan meticulously assembled across the course of an entire day. It's important to state this directly, because her family has had to endure people characterizing her as passive throughout this ordeal. She was anything but passive. Ambushed, outnumbered, surrounded by darkness and a lot full of unfamiliar faces, Maya Fuller fought back with everything she had. She swung, she resisted, she tried desperately to defend herself against two attackers who had spent their entire Saturday preparing specifically for that confrontation. It was never intended to be a fair fight, and it never was one. By the time the assault concluded, she could no longer stand on her own. The medical examiner would later document broken ribs alongside a fractured leg. There's no need to elaborate further on that point. The underlying truth is that the violence in this case had already escalated dramatically before any weapon ever entered the picture. Then someone uttered three specific words: "Pop the trunk." That single moment transforms this incident from a parking lot assault into a formal kidnapping under Tennessee statute. And once that legal threshold is crossed, every subsequent action carries an entirely different weight of consequence for each individual present. Tyshawn Bowles heard that instruction. He has openly admitted to hearing it. He stood there and watched his own sister alongside Pipkins brutally beat a woman he had personally lured to that location. And then he heard the command that followed. He didn't contact law enforcement. He didn't drive away from the scene. Instead, he climbed into his own vehicle and followed behind them. Maya was forced into the trunk of Tiana Tipton's car. The lid slammed shut. The engine roared to life. That vehicle then pulled directly out of a crowded nightclub parking lot, passing every single person who could have potentially intervened and merged onto the roadway. The journey from Antioch Pike to their eventual destination takes roughly 30 minutes, beginning on city streets before merging onto the interstate heading east, leaving Davidson County behind along with the last visible city lights. Eventually, they exited onto increasingly narrow roads, finally arriving at a rural stretch in southeastern Wilson County called Trammell Lane, where a family had recently purchased land with plans to eventually build a home there. No streetlights illuminated the area. No neighbors lived close enough to hear anything unusual. Nothing but a tree line, an open field, and darkness stretching in every direction. Bowles trailed behind them in his vehicle for the entire drive, 30 full minutes spanning from one county into another, with a young woman still alive inside the trunk of the car ahead of him, and nothing standing between him and a single phone call, except a decision he consciously chose not to make. Once they arrived at that field, Tiana Tipton shot Maya Fuller 7 separate times. That number deserves particular attention, not for shock value, but because intent forms the entire legal foundation for everything that unfolds later in this narrative. A single shot fired during a physical struggle suggests panic, something a defense attorney could potentially construct an argument around. 7 shots represents a deliberate sequence, one decision followed by another decision, followed by yet another. There exists a distinct gap between each individual shot where a person is actively choosing to continue. Afterward, she climbed back into her car and drove back to Nashville. All 3 of them returned home that night. Maya's own vehicle remained exactly where she'd parked it in that lot on Antioch Pike. Sunday morning arrived, and her family began calling. Nothing but silence answered them. Messages went unread. For a family accustomed to hearing from her without fail every single day, that silence rapidly transformed into genuine terror. She was officially reported missing on Monday, August 1st. But by that point, they weren't actually waiting for a phone call anymore. They simply didn't yet realize that truth. What they were actually waiting for was a discovery, and it arrived on August 6th. The family who owned that property on Trammell Lane, land they'd purchased roughly 2 weeks prior, was out clearing brush when they walked up toward the hilltop. According to the man who eventually spoke publicly about it, the property owners had contacted him, explaining that a body had been discovered on their land. Walking along the hillside, they came across a pair of tennis shoes partially buried in the ground, and they immediately recognized something was deeply wrong. Bright pink Puma sneakers, exactly what she'd been wearing when she left home that final night. The man recounting these details was Jason Anderson, and there's an important detail that gets briefly mentioned in reporting before moving on entirely. He's a former Wilson County Sheriff's deputy. He'd previously worked within that same county, and there he stood on camera describing receiving a phone call from clients who had purchased a building lot only to discover a young woman's remains on it. The medical examiner's official report confirmed she died from gunshot wounds. And that's precisely where this investigation stalled. Consider the complexity investigators faced. Maya resided in Rutherford County. She was attacked in Davidson County. Her remains were discovered in Wilson County. 3 separate jurisdictions, 3 distinct law enforcement agencies, 3 completely separate record-keeping systems, tracking a victim who had been transported across multiple county lines while still alive. Compounding the difficulty, the individuals responsible had absolutely no publicly visible connection to her whatsoever. No shared history, no documented prior contact. Nothing that would have naturally surfaced their names during any standard investigation into who knew Maya Fuller. The sheriff of Wilson County stood alongside her grieving parents, making a public commitment on camera. Financial incentives followed as well. The sheriff's office initially posted a $1,000 reward in August, later increasing it to $5,000 during a press conference. Her family contributed additional funds on top of that, with friends and relatives across the country raising $16,000 collectively. Combined with the sheriff's contribution and additional Crime Stoppers funding, the total reward reached approximately $21,100, available to anyone willing to come forward with information. The attorney overseeing that reward fund, Brian Lewis, had successfully executed this exact strategy previously. He'd managed the reward fund during the Caitlin Kaufman case in Nashville, and that particular effort had worked. The financial incentive loosened tongues and directly led to arrests. In this instance, however, it produced nothing. Nobody ever came forward to claim that substantial reward, not a single individual. $21,000 sitting available, a young woman lying dead in a field, and complete silence from the public. A reporter who covered this case from beginning to end would later state plainly that this case wasn't ultimately solved through public tips. It was solved through dedicated detective work. The breakthrough finally arrived on the 17th of January 2023. Search warrants were executed simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions in a single coordinated day, with numerous agencies collaborating together. What those warrants ultimately produced was digital evidence. Cell phone data became the backbone of this entire case. Because here's the fundamental reality about any scheme built around a fabricated invitation. It has to originate from a genuine account operating on an actual physical device belonging to a real, identifiable person. And every single one of those devices existed inside somebody's pocket in that parking lot at 11 o'clock that night. One of those devices subsequently made a 30-minute journey east along the interstate afterward. Investigators didn't require a traditional witness. The phones themselves served as the witnesses. In July 2023, nearly exactly 1 year after her body was discovered, a grand jury issued formal indictments. All 3 suspects were taken into custody in Nashville, individually apprehended as part of a single coordinated law enforcement operation. Tiana Tipton, 21 years old. Tyshawn Bowles, 20 years old. Lamia Pipkins, 20 years old. All 3 faced identical charges of first-degree murder alongside kidnapping, held without any possibility of bond. Her parents stood together, holding hands as they listened to those 3 names read aloud. There's one additional detail from reporting during that period that remains difficult to overlook. While this investigation remained actively open, while Wilson County detectives continued working an unsolved homicide with no suspects in custody, Tiana Tipton was arrested again, this time for assault in Montgomery County earlier that same year. This particular detail is precisely what compelled deeper coverage of this case, and it's the element that virtually every other retelling conveniently skips over entirely. 3 individuals, one single night, one victim, all 3 facing identical charges of first-degree murder committed during the perpetration of a kidnapping. Yet they emerge from this legal process with 3 drastically different outcomes for their remaining lives. March 2025. Tiana Tipton, mere days away from trial, with jury selection about to commence, stood up unexpectedly during what was supposed to be a routine pretrial hearing and pleaded guilty to every single charge against her. First-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, the complete list. Nobody anticipated this development. The district attorney confirmed as much publicly. She was sentenced immediately on the spot, receiving 2 consecutive life sentences, and she formally waived her right to ever appeal the moment she entered that guilty plea. Tiana Tipton will never be released from prison, and no legal mechanism remains available for her to contest that outcome. That accounts for one of the 3 defendants. October 2025 brought an entirely different outcome for Tyshawn Bowles. His murder charges were completely dropped. He instead pleaded guilty to facilitation of especially aggravated kidnapping, receiving a 12-year sentence. It's worth examining exactly what facilitation legally means, because this single word represents the pivotal hinge upon which this entire case turns, and it's rarely properly explained. Under Tennessee statute, facilitation of a felony applies when someone knowingly provides substantial assistance to a person committing a felony while not sharing that person's intent to actually promote or personally benefit from the crime. In simpler terms, you helped. You were aware you were helping, but prosecutors cannot definitively prove the underlying plan originated with you. Because this represents a lesser degree of participation, it automatically drops 1 full classification below the actual underlying offense. That's not a discretionary courtesy extended by a prosecutor. That's simply how the statute itself is constructed. Consider precisely what the district attorney was actually able to prove. He could demonstrate that Bowles knew about the initial argument. He could prove Bowles understood his sister was angry and intended to physically assault Maya that night. He could prove Bowles actively searched for her, located her, composed that message, and personally delivered her to that parking lot. Bowles admitted to every single one of those actions. What the state could not establish beyond reasonable doubt to 12 jurors was whether Tyshawn Bowles possessed advanced knowledge that a kidnapping was coming or that a killing was coming before either event actually occurred. That distinction represents the entire case. Not what actions he took, but what existed inside his mind at the precise moment he took them. He consistently denied any advanced knowledge of the kidnapping. He consistently denied any advanced knowledge of the murder. And absent a message, a recording, a witness, or a confession that definitively places that knowledge inside his mind beforehand, the state loses that particular argument in front of a jury. And if that argument is lost entirely, he walks away with no conviction whatsoever. So the conclusion remains consistent. As far as available evidence indicates, the prosecutor applied that statute exactly as intended. This isn't a case of leniency, it's fundamentally a proof problem. And proof problems remain entirely indifferent to how much anger the resulting outcome generates. Here's precisely how that outcome breaks down. 12 years total, and under the terms of his agreement, he becomes eligible for release after serving 30% of that sentence. 30% of 12 years calculates to 3 years and 7 months. He was originally arrested in July 2023. He entered his guilty plea in October 2025. That's already more than 2 years spent in custody, time that gets credited toward the front of his sentence. So on the actual day the judge finalized that agreement, the remaining time separating Tyshawn Bowles from a release eligibility hearing amounted to roughly a year and a half. He was 20 years old when Maya died. He'll be in his mid-20s by the time he's eligible to walk free, March 2026. Lamaya Pipkins held out considerably longer than either of her co-defendants. She watched both of them resolve their respective cases and waited all the way until the actual morning jury selection was scheduled to begin for her own trial. She then changed course and pleaded guilty to facilitation of first-degree murder, receiving a 20-year sentence under that identical legal doctrine and reasoning. She was present in that parking lot, she actively participated in the assault, and the state's operative theory held that she assisted without ever actually owning the underlying plan. 20 years calculated at that same release percentage places her initial eligibility at approximately 6 years served. So examine the complete outcome across all three defendants. The woman who actually pulled the trigger received 2 life sentences with no possibility of appeal, destined to die in prison. The woman who helped corner and brutally beat Maya in that parking lot received 20 years, eligible for release in roughly 6. And the man without whose actions none of this could have happened, who tracked down a complete stranger, located her, composed the deceptive message, watched the assault unfold, heard the explicit order given, and followed that vehicle 30 minutes into complete darkness, received 12 years, eligible for release in roughly 3.5, with more than 2 years of that time already served. That represents exactly what this legal sorting mechanism ultimately produced. There's one detail worth highlighting that often gets overlooked amid the emotional weight of this outcome. Maya's mother calculated those numbers herself, standing in open court, facing the very people responsible for taking her daughter inside what will likely remain the worst room she'll ever occupy. She stated the sentence length and the corresponding release percentage together in the same breath. 12 years, 30% served. That's not grief speaking. That's someone who thoroughly understood the paperwork, comprehended exactly what outcome it produced, and deliberately ensured it entered the public record where people could actually hear it. Listen to the advice she now offers other families navigating similar situations. Secure proper legal representation and conduct your own independent due diligence beyond that representation. That's a woman who navigated this system completely through to its conclusion and emerged advising others to thoroughly verify the work being done on their behalf. She prefaced those remarks by noting that her family consists of law-abiding citizens who wouldn't do anything to jeopardize the legal process. She followed every rule available to her. She received exactly what those rules ultimately produced. 3 guilty pleas, 2 life sentences, and 2 specific numbers. A case formally closed across 3 counties within 3.5 years. So the search continued for whatever remained unexplained. Motive: there simply isn't one documented anywhere in the official record. Not a stated motive, not a proven motive, not even a theory ever presented in open court. Investigators acknowledged from the very beginning that significant questions about motive remained unanswered, and every single one of those questions remains unanswered to this day. There's a structural explanation for that gap. All 3 defendants entered guilty pleas, meaning a trial never actually occurred. A trial represents the singular proceeding that compels the state to publicly stand up and explain its reasoning on the official record. They were never required to do that, so they simply didn't. Regarding video evidence, the sheriff's office confirmed early in the investigation that surveillance material existed and that they had communicated with Island Vibes along with surrounding businesses. Camera footage clearly contributed to building this case, yet nothing has ever been publicly released or even described regarding what those cameras actually captured within that parking lot. Whether the assault itself was recorded, whether anyone inside that building witnessed it happening, whether anyone observed a woman being forced into a trunk and simply did nothing, all of that remains undisclosed. Regarding the search itself, nobody has ever adequately explained how a man with absolutely no prior connection to Maya Fuller managed to locate her online within a matter of hours. And regarding accountability beyond that courtroom, none appears to exist anywhere. No policy review was conducted. No interagency findings were issued. Nothing addressing how a young woman was assaulted within a crowded nightclub parking lot in Davidson County and then transported out of it while still alive. The singular positive outcome this entire case produced is something her own family constructed themselves. A scholarship established in her memory, honoring teamwork, academic integrity, athletic leadership, and love directed both toward oneself and toward others. Her family accomplished that, not the state. There's simply no case file precedent here that adequately explains any of this. That's the conclusion this investigation keeps circling back toward. In most cases resembling this one, there exists some kind of paper trail that someone previously ignored, a warning sign, a prior complaint, some documented record that clearly signaled exactly what was coming, if anyone had bothered reading it, a name that had surfaced somewhere before. In this instance, none of that existed whatsoever. No prior history connected these individuals, no previous contact of any kind, nothing recorded in any system anywhere, linking Maya Fuller to Tiana Tipton before that single Friday night. There was no warning sign to have missed, and whatever originally sparked this entire chain of events was so seemingly insignificant that prosecutors themselves characterized it as not serious and so unimportant that across 3.5 years spanning investigation, indictment, and 3 separate guilty pleas, not a single person has ever revealed what it actually was. A young woman lost her life over something nobody apparently considers worth explaining. Her mother received a closed case, 3 convictions, and the certainty that Tiana Tipton will die behind bars. That represents something meaningful. It's considerably more closure than many families in this exact position ever received. But 2 of the 3 individuals who left her daughter in that field are ultimately coming home. One of them before he even turns 25. Maya Christine Fuller, 22 years old, graduated with academic distinction, a basketball player, a daughter who called home without fail every single day of her life, which remains the sole reason anyone began searching for her as quickly as they did.